I'd like to call to order the Scotch Plains Fanwood Board of Education regular public meeting, October 18th, 2018. Mrs. Saradaki, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Boroff? Here. Dr. Clancy?
Here.
Mrs. Soriani?
Here.
Mrs. Winkler?
Here.
Dr. Klukowski?
Here.
Mrs. Bauer?
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Please join us in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board just met in executive session and discussed personnel, HIB, and the suspension report. Notice of this meeting was given to the Township Clerk of Scotch Plains, the Borough Clerk of Fanwood, and to the Times. So that brings us to the instructional update. Dr. Hayes, if you want to do an introduction. Dr. Mass?
Pleasure. Dr. Mass is here this evening to present the annual district assessment report, and she is supported by our math supervisor, John Benninger, as well as our language arts supervisor, and I'm having a senior moment, Liz McKenna, and they work hand in glove with Dr. Mast in terms of producing this report because it does focus primarily on language arts literacy scores as well as math scores. These are the scores that come to us courtesy of the State Department of Education via PARC, and I believe this year there's also some reporting on the DLM.
That's correct.
Which is a special education assessment.
And the access.
And the access, which is the ELL, or English Language Learner testing that takes place. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mass. She will be using the overhead, and we'll go from there.
It's easy to see. I don't want to miss anything. Just sliding down. Oh, sorry. I would have just.
All right, so let's see. I never sat on this side before. When I began, I sat there.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes, and thank you to the Curriculum Committee who also reviewed this report on Monday. It has quite a few slides, and at the Curriculum Committee meeting, I was able to supply popcorn. Unfortunately, we ate it all, and I don't have any for you tonight. But we were excited to look at the PARC scores this year because it is the 4th year that the test has been given. And it's really brought us back to a place where we're approaching some longitudinal data, which is really then more informative for us regarding cohorts of students and just the curriculum in general. We know that the PARC test is just one measure on a given period of time, a day or two for any student. So in that way, we have a more holistic way to look at children. But we do value the view that it gives us. So for those of you who have looked at PARC results, you know that it goes into 5 different buckets, from not yet meeting, to partially meeting, to approaching grade level expectations. Then it moves on to meeting grade level expectations and exceeding grade level expectations. So I just have 2 big overviews for you to look at that just gives us the entire picture of just this year's results. So if you look at the cluster of bar graphs, the first one in every group of 3 is all of the other states that participate in PARC. The middle the middle bar graph is the state of New Jersey, and the third bar graph is Scotch Plains Fenwick. And the blue is the area where students are exceeding, and the green is meeting, the yellow is approaching, and the 4 is met, and the red is not yet met. So if you look at that first cluster, just the shape of it, that's exactly what we want to see and what we would expect. We would always expect that Scotch Plains would do better on average than the state and other states who are participating in PARC. You'll also see, if you look at the first cluster of 3 and the second cluster of 3, everyone has a higher range of blue. So that would tell you something about how PARC is calibrating their tests, but still what we always want to see is that upward slant for our results. So in every case, this just shows us grades 3 through 8 in language arts, and we were happy to see what we would expect to see. Then when we go on to grades, grade 8 reappears here to kind of anchor us again. Grades 8 through 11, we still see those same shapes where we're always above the state and the other participating states. But what we also notice is that our reds get a little bit larger or our blues get a little bit smaller, particularly in 11th grade, because you'll notice that we have a participation issue. We only have 82 students who are electing to take the test because they have already met their graduation requirement. So we have 82 students who might not have met the graduation requirement, or who just really like taking the PARC test, or perhaps their parents make them take the PARC test. I'm not sure, but as we get into the high school years, the results change a little bit. So that's the picture for language arts. When we go on to mathematics, it's similar. You'll notice that the blue and the green isn't quite as high as it is in language arts, but it's that way for the state of New Jersey and all of the other states, so it's really something that's intrinsic to the test, even though Liz McKenna might like to think otherwise. It used to be the other way, where the math was always higher than the language arts, and perhaps this was somehow by some test designer's way of making it more fair to flip it. But we see the same shape graphs. We also see a similar thing that happens when we get to the high school, where the students for the graduation requirement must pass Algebra 1, and many of our students do. And something we're very proud of is that many of our students do in 8th grade. So this Algebra 1 is a mix of 8th grade students who passed the first time they took it, and students at the high school who took the Algebra 1 test again. So what's the first time for us to look at is the cohorts. And the reason why we like to see this is we like to see just a particular group of students, how they progress along. So this is the class of 2026. They are our current 5th graders. And what we see here, we only have 2 bars. We dropped the other PARC participating states, and we're just looking at the state of New Jersey and Scotch Plains Fanwood. We can see that in 4th grade, the same group of students did better than they did on the test in 3rd grade. When we go to our current 6th graders, you can see that they did a little bit better, they did a lot better in 4th grade, especially in the exceeding category. When they got to 5th grade, they had a little bit of a wobble, and Ms. McKenna might speak to that in a little while. If we go on, we see the same thing. Now we're to our current 7th graders. We can see in 4th grade, the results there. They have a bit of a dip in 5th grade, but they're still doing better than the state. And then in 6th grade, they have a bit of a bounce back up. And our current 8th graders. Have your eyes focused where you see the most blue on that graph. We have more than 50% of our students in 7th grade, our current 8th graders, who exceeded the expectations. Their overall passing rate was quite high, and look at the red, you can hardly see it. So that 7th grade year, that 7th grade result is a banner result, and I will not say any more about it yet. If we go on to our current 9th graders, you can see that they had a small dip in 8th grade in the exceeding category, but not in the met grade level expectations category. And this is our current 10th graders. It's a similar situation where in 8th grade, or from 8th to 9th, there's a little bit of a dip. Our current 11th graders, you'll notice again that there's a slight dip in the blue, not in the green. And you'll notice that it comes back up a little bit in grade 10. In the blue, but not in the green. But pretty much they look rather steady. And then our class of 2019, they are our seniors. And again, when you look at that last pair of bars, that's 82 students taking that 11th grade test. So it does drop off a bit there, quite a bit. So now going on to the math, we're going to look at the cohorts also. In some cases, the math is different because in language arts, it's language arts grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. In math, it's algebra 1. Whether you took it in 8th grade, you might take it again in 9th grade. Mostly, 9th graders take geometry, but not always. So there's a bit of a blend of the grades. So here we see our current 5th graders, how they did in grade 3 and grade 4. Though their overall meeting expectations and exceeding expectations, their overall passing is higher, their blue area is a little bit lower. Our class of 2025, our current 6th graders, are dropping off a little bit in 5th grade. When we go to our class, our current 7th graders, we can see that it's fairly steady. They have the highest amount of exceeding as 4th graders, and in 5th grade and 6th grade, they're kind of staying where they are. Our current 8th graders have, in 7th grade, have the highest when you combine the blue and the green. And 7th grade looks like a strong year for them. Here we see that the current 9th graders are kind of leveling off in grade 7 and in Algebra 1. Now, the Algebra 1, we have many students taking that. That's a mix of the 8th grade and the high school students. And still, if you look at that comparatively to the state, it's something that we've been working on and has been climbing up a little bit. So it's an area that we're working on, and we're happy with the results and the trend of the results. Here we have our, so this is our current 10th graders and how they're doing. After they take the algebra test, after they pass the algebra test, The geometry and algebra 2 are extras if they pass the algebra. And, you know, there, I would, can't really compare that to the algebra test because it's a different content, but do compare it to the big space we have in performing better than the state. That's a nice big gap. And for our current 11th graders, we could see the same thing. The algebra 2, again, is you know, the test is getting to be an extra test. They've already taken algebra 1, they're taking the geometry, they're showing up to take the algebra 2. They're doing much better than the state, but we have room to grow there for sure. And here, this is our current seniors, right? And how they did on the geometry and the algebra 2. So those views really help us to see particular classes and to see if there's any interesting change that happens. It's very informative to us. The other way, I'm not going to go through all of these slides, though I will post them on the website or as our district testing report, but just to give us new data is just another way to look at it. So, for example, if we look at the 7th grade English language arts, this isn't the same group of kids. This is 7th grade results for 3 consecutive years. So we could see how steady we are. We could see if there's an increase or a decrease, and it just gives us a good pointer to go and see if there's a reason to look more deeply. I also did grade 5 math because we noticed that grade 5 has a dip from grade 4, but if you look at it this way, it's not like grade 5 is going down. Grade 5 is holding steady. So I know Mr. Benninger and the teachers will eventually find a way to make it grow. But it isn't bad news. You can see that it's holding steady. The Algebra 1 results, too, you can see from 3 years ago, we're up and those scores are improving. And that's why that's the story that we're very pleased with. So that's all set for those who enjoyed that particular view. Will be available for you on the website. We also are looking at the scores both in language arts and math in the subgroups. But the data that we have available at this point from the state is only comparing the subgroups to each other. So, and the size of the subgroups also vary, which we know statistically will show us, you know, the larger the number, the more reliable the group. But when you have a small number of students, what's great about that is you could go and you could meet with them. You could go and find out what help it is that we need. So when we look at the ethnicity graphs, these, all 5 of them are representing different categories. So we're looking at Hispanic students, Asian students, Black or African American students, white students, and 2 or more races. In some cases, in that second group of bar graphs, you'll see that there's one that's kind of whited out, and that's because the number of students is less than 20, because then it becomes quite personal. So when we look at this, we can see that our Hispanic students in grades 3 through 5 are underperforming the Asian students and the white students. And the same happens to be true with our Black students, are underperforming in these scores to the Asian and the white students. But again, we have 57 Hispanic students in grade 3. We have 32 African American students in grade 3. And what we do is we have a whole other spreadsheet that shows scores over time and other data as well to make sure that we're creating the appropriate interventions. So that's a view that we have, and that pattern is fairly consistent. When we go to special education, what we compare our special education students to is non-special education students. So it's the complement of the set, that's what the state provides for us, and our special education students typically do less well than our general education students on the PARCC test. And then it's a similar story when we go and we look at that information for mathematics. So this year, I haven't mentioned this before, and it was actually something I was able to work with the special education department to learn a little bit more about. We do have some students who take a test called the Dynamic Learning Maps. This test is designed for our most significantly cognitively disabled students. So they too have the opportunity to enjoy standardized testing, and they are scored in similar types of categories. We have 25 students who took the test, and you could see that they were either emerging or approaching expectations or meeting the target, or they were advanced. And you can see that we have students scored in all of those different categories. Additionally, we have students who take a test called the Access Test. This is a student that we give to our English language learners who take courses, the ESL courses, English as a Second Language. And this test, the results are something that I also got to speak to our world language supervisor about. The test is given to the students every year, and if it's a student who is just arriving and isn't speaking English, they might be able to do well. The expectation is like 4 years to be able to pass the test. But the test will still show growth for all of the students. So this explains a little bit about the test, that it is for our ELL students. It measures listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And we had 44 students take that test. And 3 of the students received a 4.5 or higher, which is considered a passing grade. So the question is, what's the highest score you can get? And I learned that your highest score is 6. So a 4.5 is what passes. And another question that came up during the curriculum committee is this a growing group of students for us? And about 5 years ago, we had 10 less. It was in the low 30s. So, but most recently, it's been around 40, 42 students. So I'm going to stop at the next steps slide, because after we look at all of this data, both John and Liz lead conversations with principals and teachers on how to make it useful. So they're going to give you their insights. And I meant to have them flip a coin, but since Liz is sitting closest, we'll have her go first.
So we had a lot to be excited about on both the elementary and the secondary level when it comes to language arts. So I'm going to start with kind of our big celebrations, and then I'll talk about some of our noticings from the data, and then our wonderings and next steps that our noticings kind of revealed for us. So in the elementary level, the numbers, of course, are wonderful, but I'm also more concerned about the actual skills, and we can get that data from PARCC, so we can find out exactly which questions students got wrong and what percentage of our students got them wrong. So I really dug deeply into the sub-scores to think about what are the things that we think we've been working on for the last few years, and how is that coming across for our students. So in the elementary level, our writing sub-scores are always well above the state average, which is something that we're always really pleased to hear about, because we do a lot of work with writing, both in professional development, on the teacher level, as well as thinking about it on a district level. We had our tri-state visit last year to help us really think through our writing program, and that success is the fruits of our labor. So we're always really glad to see that our writing sub-scores are well above state and national performance. In terms of our reading, there are 2 sub-skills that we've been working on recently with teachers both in guided reading and in shared reading lessons, and that is reading informational texts in the content areas. I spoke to you about that last year and the year before, but it's something that we continue to help students to work on, and it's an area where we continue to grow. So not only are we being successful, but every year we're increasing our success rates with that. And last year we had some hiccups with students' performance on vocabulary-based questions. So vocabulary context and target vocabulary, and those scores are up this year, which is gratifying to see because we've, again, done work on that. So across the board, students are providing support for their thinking, they're doing well when they're asked to support an answer with evidence, and they're really, the skills that we think teachers are focusing on, the students are showing success with. So that's always great news for us to hear. As Dr. Mast noted, there was a wondering about 5th grade, and this has been a wondering for a few years now. The language arts scores in 5th grade have improved, but they're still below, there's still a dip from 4th to 5th grade. And so we've really been thinking about what are the things that make 5th grade different from 4th grade? What are the ways that 5th graders and 5th grade teachers need support that might be different from 4th grade teachers and 4th graders? So we did do a lot of work with 5th grade, so we're glad to see that those scores have risen from the year before. We're still not sure about that dip. There are a lot of students who fall in a 3 for 5th grade, and I think that that to us says those are students who could very easily get up to that 4. So that's an area of focus for us this year, is 5th grade in particular, and particularly those students who might be struggling with transitioning from 4th to 5th grade, and those teachers who might need some extra support with dealing with those students. In terms of our secondary, we do, as Dr. Mast said, have outstanding scores in the 7th grade, which I could not be more excited about because our 7th grade teachers are really engaged with Reading Workshop work. For those of you who don't know, Reading Workshop is a model of instruction that allows students increased flexibility in their choice in what they read. It's really focused on transferable strategies as opposed to content. So rather than placing emphasis on the details of The Giver, Reading Workshop says, do you know how to read a book like The Giver? We're just using The Giver to show you how to do that. And the 7th grade has really embraced that with open arms, and so to see their success rate is really gratifying for us because it means that this model that we believe in is actually showing fruit. So that's something that we're really excited to continue growing up and down. So how will that look in the 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and then what will that look like moving down as well? We've also seen an increased improvement in vocabulary-based questions in the secondary level as well. If you ask any language arts teacher in this district, they will tell you that they have been thinking about vocabulary and how to get kids to actually understand vocabulary in context as opposed to memorize a list of words. So we're really moving in that direction, and it's, again, great to see that we're seeing success from that. We do have a drop-off in the high school, as Dr. Mast pointed out, which we've seen for the last couple of years. My wondering is if the new graduation requirements will change that drop-off. As of this year's freshman class is, as of right now, as of today, as I'm speaking to you, the first class who will not have any other alternate pathways to graduation but the portfolio. They are the first class that will have to pass the PARCC assessment. So before this, students knew that if they failed the PARCC, there were 6 or 7 other tests they could take, SAT, PSAT, ASVAB, things like that, that would fulfill their graduation requirement. We don't know how much that has impacted the way they take the PARCC. We knew for a while it impacted how many students took the PARCC, but we don't know how much that impacted the way they prepared for it, the way they sat for it, etc. There is a proposal right now that would negate all of what I just said to you. And then 9th grade would still have an option to take all of those tests to graduate. So we don't know how that's going to impact our student scores and what impact that does have on it. My plan this year with our secondary, specifically high school English department, is to focus on those 9th and 10th graders who were falling in that 2-3 range on either their 8th grade test or their 9th grade test, to talk to them, have a conversation with them to figure out, was that 3 because they were tired, they didn't really pay that much attention, they kind of rushed through it, or is it a case of skills that need to be supported? So we're really going to take a deep dive into the high school this year because whatever they call it, there's going to be some kind of test that they need to pass to graduate from high school. So it's important that we make sure that our students are as prepared for that as they can be, whether that's their primary pathway to graduation or one of many pathways to graduation. So that's language arts. Questions? Or do you want to hear,
We'll
hear from
wait
John?
till the
Okay.
end.
Thank you. Hello. So we're moving on to math, and I'll do it by grade level because it's a little bit easier, especially as we get up to the high school level where there are multi-grade levels in courses. So for our 3rd and 4th graders, we are really maintaining a focus on challenge for our students through the math program, because as we looked at the bars, we can see that our students who normally exceed could be higher. And we would like them to be higher. So giving them other opportunities to challenge their notions of mathematics is something we always look at in grades 3 and 4. Similar to language arts, or similarly to language arts, fifth grade does show the same transition in mathematics. And for the teachers of fifth grade, we're always preoccupied with the content and the skills instead of the way that students are encountering them. And it's the word problems. It's just about the word problems and the scenarios. So we continually work to expand the, I guess you would call it, the depth. I'm going to call it the depth of those problems, because we have some that skim the surface of the skills, but they don't dive deeply enough into use of the skills and concepts. So we're always working on expanding the number of those types of experiences for fifth graders, and we'll hope that that will increase the scores. I do think a lot of it has to do with, it's a transitional year for them as far as building and so forth. Sixth grade, as you know, we have a new program. It's only our third year of implementation. We're still working to align all of the strands to the units of study. And it doesn't surprise me to see that sometimes in sixth grade there is a little bit of a dip for that reason. I think teachers are still working with me on really understanding what we're doing with that strand of data analysis. That is one area that continually our sixth graders struggle with, and it's because of the verbiage and the problems. It's very wordy, and they're not really sure what they're being asked. So we'll continue to look at that in grade 6. But 7 and 8 are our celebrations. 7th grade, as you remember, historically with NJS was our trouble year. And it's not really the case because we're focused more on algebra now. So 7th and 8th grade is showing those gains of algebraic thinking, and then as they go up into the high school, we don't have that many students who have to retake Algebra 1. They pass in 8th grade, which is really a celebration. We should always be proud of that as a district. I will remain a proponent of that idea. When you start to see the geometry scores, you realize there are 9th and 10th graders in that grouping. So for us to have the number of 9th and 10th graders taking that test who do and pass it is also very celebratory, I think. Algebra 2, maybe not so much, but we are working to get the participation rate up there. Students don't need the test to graduate, although we do tell them from September, we really want you to take the test, not for you, but for us. Because we can see if we have really delivered what we need to deliver as far as the math curriculum up through Algebra 2. So we'll hope to increase participation at the high school, but overall we're very satisfied and we get a lot of information from the graph. So thank you, Dr. Mast, for always sharing that information.
Okay. Okay, we'll open it up for questions. I know a number of you, though, were in the committee and curriculum and had a lot of opportunity to ask questions. But are there any other questions that people have that they would like to ask?
I have a comment and a question. Thank you, Dr. Bass, for putting this all together for us, and we'll take time to look at it. I guess I'm curious, and there's no way for us to know. Our fifth graders are in a new school that probably most of the other kids in the state are not in fifth grade.
Cindy, in the microphone.
Oh, sorry. So with our fifth graders having this little struggle, what do you see the connection to them moving to a new building, a new way of learning, moving around, still one teacher, but a new place? I don't know if you've thought about, obviously you've thought about that, but I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
I think that we do notice that transition years from 4th to 5th or from 8th to 9th does cause some testing challenges where you see a little bit of wobble in the scores.
I think the way to get more information is to, to look closely at what the kids are doing in class, also professional development for the teachers, to just see if the content of what they're teaching and the kids are learning are aligned to the test. But I think the transition for fifth graders is just an adjustment.
Well, and if Mr. Veninger mentioned if there are more I didn't like word problems. If there are more word problems, that, if the structure of the test sort of takes a move too, I guess that's part of what you can
I think the test, too, gets progressively more difficult. I think that, as Ms. McKenna said, the whole effort of reading across the curriculum certainly applies to mathematics and word problems. Every test is a reading test. So I think the work that we're doing with reading in the content areas should help, too.
And my other question is if you could just give an example of, with the subgroups and the performances of the subgroups that may not be where we'd like them to be, any of you have an example of what you do when you say you're going to dive into the data or look at something. I'd just like to hear an example of that from any of you would like. Okay.
Sure, yeah, because I think you all know I'm a little spreadsheet happy, so I have a lot of spreadsheets of our students, and what we do typically is I will select that cohort and I track their benchmark data over the years that I have, and I have benchmark data all the way back to first grade if they've been with us that long, because we do an end-of-year math test. The benchmark data, a benchmark is basically an end-of-year test that they're going to take at the end of every year. We call it a student growth assessment in mathematics, but they're given that 3 times a year. But I take the last one, and we track that. And if the student is growing each year, then I'm satisfied we're helping them along the way. It's the children who are not showing growth or who have a decline in those scores year to year who we focus on. So we have data like that in language arts as well. But for math, I'm always showing those spreadsheets because you can see if the student was with us in kindergarten, we can see their growth all the way through high school. So we can dive into that data very closely to see how well they've been doing each year and have they been improving or not. And that's the kind of analysis that we can do. And then if a student isn't showing that, we'll meet with them to see what's going on. And sometimes they tell you other things that have nothing to do with the math or the language arts, as you would suspect.
Oh, thank you.
I can say that for language arts. I'll jump in. So I mentioned about the reading workshop structure. So one thing that we've been doing over the past few years is taking a look to see if our language arts curriculum mirrors the student population. So do we have various ethnicities represented? Do we have various races represented? Do we have various genders represented? And the reading workshop model allows students more choice, and we know that students become more engaged readers, learners, thinkers, people, when they, A, can choose what they want to do, and then B, when they see themselves reflected in what they're doing. So we've really worked hard to diversify the text lists that teachers are using. We have an initiative in the elementary school that Noelle Baxter, our social studies supervisor, is working with teachers to think about multicultural issues. So really thinking about if those subgroups are struggling with reading is part of the reason because they don't see themselves as reading. And so how can we kind of help to support them see themselves in the text that they're engaging with?
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate the interest and the intent that you both have. You have having your hands on the pulse of the students in both the language arts and mathematics. And Joan, the report is outstanding of putting such complicated data together in such an understandable and easy way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, comments or questions? We do very much appreciate the attention to detail, all the behind the scenes that we know is going on, because it isn't just subgroups, they're actual students, and we know you're focusing on them. I did just have a question. I think, aren't there some changes coming down the pike in terms of testing in New Jersey, and how do we think that's going to be affecting anything? Is it just...
Thanks, both of us. So yeah, so for mathematics, as you know, Algebra 1 was the requirement, the graduation requirement, and there was some discussion that the other courses following Algebra 1 i.e. geometry and algebra 2, would not be tested. But that did not happen. However, they did talk about bringing back the alternate measures that students could use, such as the ACT, the SAT, the PSAT, the ASVAB. There's a list of other tests that they can take that students can use in lieu of that passing score for Algebra 1. So for the upcoming 9th graders, who are our current 8th graders, I'm hoping, and if you're all listening, or parents, make sure that we're still doing well on our Algebra 1 test, because if there's an option to use something else that you feel that you might do better on, sometimes there's impact on the way that students will take the test. So for mathematics, it's really talking about only Algebra 1, because that's our graduation requirement, and then we'll have to see what happens with the geometry and Algebra 2. Although we're a culture of not teaching to a test but valuing data we get, so I'm hoping the students have taken on that viewpoint as well.
So for language arts, there's a change to the actual test, and then there's a change to the graduation requirement. So for language arts, as of this year, the proposal is that most sections will go from 90 minutes to 75 minutes, which I think could greatly impact our scores, because if we have students who just can't concentrate through the length of the test, having the test be shorter is going to impact their scores, hopefully in a good way. I don't think anybody's going to say, man, I wish I had 15 more minutes of standardized testing. So we hope. And then as John said, the graduation requirement, the proposal is right now, this year's freshman class has to take and pass Park 10 in order to graduate. If they do not pass Park 10, they have to take Park 9, 10, and 11 before they can take the alternate measure, which is our portfolio. There is no other test they can take. They can't substitute the SAT, they can't substitute the PSAT, anything like that. The 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, they can still substitute or take the portfolio. The proposal is that the same alternate measures afforded to current 10th, 11th, and 12th graders would be afforded to 9th grade and below, and that there would be no 11th grade test. So they would take 10th grade and that would be it. There would be no English 11 test. So if you're thinking about the way our data looks, certainly our 11th grade scores are our lowest scores, because those are our students who have traditionally not passed in their 10th grade year. So they're trying to pass again in their 11th grade year. So that, again, will, I think, greatly impact our scores. If the 10th grade test is the only test they can use for graduation, hopefully we see an increase in our passing rate. If there are still multiple measures that they can use, I don't know that we'll see that same jump up, because students will still have those alternate pathways. So again, like John said, we'll hope that they're ingrained, that they know that the data is important and that it shows a real record of their learning, but we can't say for sure.
Thank you.
So on that note, Liz and John, I have a question, because I want clarification for the public that may be watching at home. We know that the test will be shorter this year because the state has indicated that they want it to take less time. But that doesn't mean that the kids will need to rush through sections. So could you speak to how they shorten it without putting more pressure on kids?
For language,
Okay.
For language arts, most of the sections include short response, multiple choice, and an extended response. So they'll probably, my guess, they haven't given too many specifics, but my guess is that they'll cut the number of some of those tasks for students. So they'll probably won't cut the extended responses, but they'll probably have fewer short responses or fewer multiple choice questions per section, which would be fine by me.
Okay.
And it's the same, and John says it's the same for math.
Any other comments? Or thank you all very much for your hard work. We really appreciate it, and we know it doesn't end tonight.
And please accept my thanks as well. The depth of the data dive can't be underestimated. When John and when Liz say that they analyze question by question, they do that. They also work with the principals on those results, and then the teachers have the opportunity to look at that data in grade level cohorts. So it's important to know that everyone takes a good look at this data. And Dr. Mast, thank you for always taking the time. I mean, it feels when we do this at the board level that it's just one slide after another, but when you realize the intensity of the work that goes into producing each of those slides, it's a very in-depth task. So thank you for the attention to detail and for the fine organization that you give to it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the first opportunity for the public. If anyone would like to come to the microphone, according to our policies 0164 and 0165, we ask that you give us your name, the town in which you reside, and we have 2 minutes per speaker.
Good evening, board members. My name is Henna Mehta. I'm a resident of Scotch Plains. My question is in regards to the school district and how, like, where it places in terms of where it ranks in terms of per pupil cost, and also what is a graduation rate for this specific school? Like how, in like accordance with Park and everything, how does that affect the graduation rate? Like what differences do you see in the elementary level as well as the middle school level and the high school level?
So there isn't a graduation rate for elementary to middle school. There is an official graduation rate for the high school, and I can get that for you. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but generally our graduation rate is very high. It's reported by the state for both 4-year cohorts and 5-year cohorts. 4-year cohorts would be students who graduate within 4 years at the high school, and then there are some students that can have an extra year for a variety of reasons. One could be they've missed a course somewhere along the line and they have to make something up. But secondly, special education students are, in some cases, eligible to be in school through the age of 21. And when they exercise that right to be in school through the age of 21, they're not going to graduate within a 4-year cohort. This was a discussion today. I attended a convocation with the Commissioner of Education, and there were districts that were conveying to him that it would be helpful if the state allowed us to look at the graduation rates a little differently, because when you have a student that's both entitled to stay on beyond grade 12 to essentially what could be grade 13, 14, it looks like somehow that's a mark against the schools because you don't have as many kids graduating on time, but in fact that is on time for them. So if you contact my office, I can give you the specific numbers. They really are very respectable. We're very proud of our graduation rate. And again, the students don't actually graduate from the 8th grade because we only issue one diploma, which is at the end of grade 12. The vast majority of our students transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. We have a very low retention rate in our elementary schools and very, very low retention in the middle schools. It's rare that children are retained, and when they are, it's always done in concert with conversations with their parents, because sometimes children do benefit from the gift of time, but sometimes it's equally important to keep them with their age cohorts and just give them the supplemental help that they need. Relative to costs,
I don't know it off the top of my head, I forget.
I don't know that there's a specific ranking of cost per pupil by district. We tend to get grouped into categories, right?
Yeah, well, the taxpayer guide to spending, which you can Google and get, the New Jersey taxpayer guide to spending, does identify all the districts in the state with a cost per student.
The thing,
And it does,
go ahead.
I believe it does rank them too.
Okay.
Into what number you are.
So we're clearly not at the bottom of per pupil spending. We're clearly not at the top. And the other thing that I would caution you about, and again, you can reach out to Mrs. Saradaki for a deep dive into this, but The statistics on cost per pupil, you will find a number of different costs per pupil. And it's not because school districts are trying to make this complicated for our public. It's just that when the state calculates these things, sometimes some metrics include some costs and exclude some costs. So for example, transportation is a cost that varies widely from one district to another. There are some districts that have large, significant costs relative to transportation because of where their schools are located and the safety of, or the non-existence of walking routes. There are other districts that virtually have no costs because everyone walks, except perhaps for special education students or students who have to be transported out of district to special education placements. So it's sometimes challenging if you see a cost here per pupil and then you see another cost over here per pupil, you'll go like, well, why aren't they the same? They're not the same because they reflect different metrics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to come to the microphone? There will be another opportunity. Okay, seeing no one, we're going to move on. I know we did a number of committee reports at our last meeting, but I know we have at least one tonight for curriculum.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. I have the curriculum committee report. We met on Monday, October 15th, and we had myself, Amy Boroff, Stephanie Soriani, and Amy Winkler present as committee members with district staff Dr. Hayes, Dr. Mast, Lisa Rabimbus, Wayne Mallett, and Erin Mullman. We had the update on elementary parent-teacher conference forum by Erin Mullman, and she discussed the elementary parent-teacher conference forum that had been updated for the 2018-2019 school year. The forum was designed to help organize students' information in preparation for conferences with parents to document what was discussed during the conference. Next, we talked about dyslexia screening process with Mrs. Rabimbus and Erin Mullman, and they are asking the Board of Ed to approve the dyslexia screening process. They described the process that is used at different grade levels and the assessments that are used to identify students with dyslexia. Next, we talked about updated proficiencies in art and music by Wayne Mallett, and he updated the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee on the work that he has been accomplishing with the Fine Arts Department. He met with the visual arts teachers and music teachers to review and update the district proficiencies. These teams did an audit to ensure that all the standards are being met and included work readiness standards and technology standards. The board is going to be asked to approve the updated proficiencies this evening. And lastly, but not least, the PARCC test results for 2017 by Dr. Joan Mast, as she just made her presentation. She presented them to the committee, and we looked at the similar data that night and the dynamic learning groups data, and this evening she presented it to the board, and thank you very much for the comprehensive report that you did that night and tonight. That concludes my report.
Okay. I don't think there are any other committee reports. Are there?
For later.
Yeah, we'll do policy later.
Policy.
Yes, policies later. Okay. So that brings us to the superintendent's.
So just note, we did have, in addition to the agenda that I just want to reference, it was a letter to the board from Dr. Basili and reference to personnel matter, so it was referred to exec. Just wanted to note that. All right. Tonight, I'd ask the board to approve the out-of-district placements as listed on the agenda. One has to do with the revision to the extended school year program for a student. An additional one is a new placement. And the third one is a student who is entitled to secondary transition programming, but on that third one, we will only be paying the educational costs and the mandatory student fees.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. 2S I would ask that the board approve the superintendent's decisions in the Hibb case that was presented to the board on September 25th in executive session. This case was appealed, and the board has concluded that the decision of the superintendent will stand, and those that did the investigation. And so I would ask that the board approve a motion tonight acknowledging that the case was presented on September 25th, and that post the appeal, the decision is affirmed.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We don't have to do a roll call, right?
No.
Abstain.
And an
one
abstention, one
Right.
abstention.
Thank you. We do not have any field trips to approve at this time. 4S, and this is a roll call vote. The curriculum committee was very busy, as has been our fine arts department, and you see a list of proficiencies for vocal music, instrumental music, and visual art classes. And we would ask that these proficiencies be approved this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Saradaki?
Dr. Kulikowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Winkler?
Yes.
Mrs. Boroff?
Yes.
Dr. Clancy?
Yes.
Mrs. Suriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bauer?
Yes.
Thank you. And 6S, I have distributed to the board our enrollment numbers for October 15th. These are the official numbers that are used as the basis for our AASA report, right, Mrs. Saradaki?
Yes.
And they help determine our state aid in succeeding years. And so enrollment, as I've reported previously, and at the beginning of the school year, when we did our opening of school report, is pretty consistent. For 2017, we had 5,584 students. As we opened for October 15th, we have 5,635 for an increase of 51 students from October of 17 to October of 18.
So moved.
Okay?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions about the enrollment report? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. For 6S, I am distributing to the board, and I think there are some copies in the back for the members of the public. These are the proposed goals for our strategic plan. We are in year 2 of our strategic plan, and I did share these goals in the committee meetings over the course of October. And so tonight, I'm asking to review these proposed goals. We are only voting on the fact that they were presented. The approval of the goals I'm asking for in the first meeting of the board in November, so that if anybody has any additional suggestions or wants to amend anything, there'll be ample time. So I'll briefly review these for the benefit of the public. We, outside of our strategic plan, we always keep as our anchor goal that we will meet or exceed the NJDOE performance targets for students' academic performance. And we do this in 2 ways. First of all, we work on ensuring that our students are prepared for the PARCC assessments. You heard that report given this evening. And related to that, we work very closely with our teaching staff to help them develop student growth objectives that target academic growth for students. And so those are our first 2 anchor goals. We will continue that work. Out of our strategic plan, the public helped us identify 4 general areas that they wanted our school district to focus on, and the first has to do with health and wellness. And in our second year, we have a number of initiatives that we think will advance that work. Each of our schools has a school safety team. These folks track data in terms of student code of conduct, performance, HIB, and general reviews of how kids are navigating through the school relative to their health and wellness. And those safety teams are going to be provided with additional training, and there'll be outreaches to engage, to identify parent engagement so that we can further support not only the current health, wellness, and safe school environments, but also plan for articulation relative to future initiatives in that area. Mrs. Rabimbis did a report last spring for the board where she identified many of the programs we currently have in place, and now we're in the process of looking at which programs we should maintain and which programs perhaps we should increase. In addition, with the board's support, we were able to recruit and employ new staff to support student mental health initiatives, and you will see on the agenda this evening the appointment of 2 additional staff members who are student assistance specialists who will be working in our schools. That's to provide mental health supports, social skills groupings, and any other interventions that students would benefit from in our school district. This is on top of 2 additional social workers, so that will bring our total to 4 counselors not assigned to child study team that can assist our students across the district. We are also going to be exploring best practices and available resources to enhance the wellness components, particularly in our elementary health curriculum. In the area of mindfulness and other social skills developments, we are going to continue the expansion of those initiatives. Some, for example, are our participation in the Say Hello program, Mindful Moments. Terrell Middle School has an initiative, Making Great Things Better. Park has an initiative in terms of the Garden Lunch Bunch. In addition, we have programming that's done during Health and Wellness Week, and that will move us forward in those directions. That listing is not meant to be limited. Other initiatives will be developed through the course of the year, and they'll be reported on by the principals to us at Administrative Council, and then we'll forward those reports on to the board. We have a particular initiative in deepening the understanding of how students in grades 6 through 12 experience school. And in relation to that, we are going to develop focus group interviews with students across those grade levels. The administrative team will be assisting me in that. And by speaking to students individually and in small groups, we're hoping to get a better understanding of how they're experiencing schools. And that qualitative data can be used to help us shape programming for them. We are going to provide for parents a series of interactive discussions so that they can help students navigate growing up. We're going to focus on the text How to Raise an Adult by Judy Lythcott-Hames, and we'll be launching that as part of the PTA Ed Forum this fall. We are also going to create a series of lessons for 5th grade students to help develop their skills as effective digital citizens. We recognize that as students transition into the middle school, social media becomes ever more present for them, and to help them have good skill sets in terms of knowing how to handle those pieces, we felt it was appropriate to begin that support in 5th grade. We're going to provide opportunities for our teachers to deepen their understanding of integrating mindfulness strategies into the classroom practices, and this will be done through our after-school Flex professional development mindfulness workshops. The middle schools are preparing a group of parent and student workshops, Surviving and Thriving in the Adolescent Years, and we will be implementing one of those workshops in October and a second one in January. We're going to continue our work in terms of improving security in our buildings. We'll be piloting the installation of a security vestibule at Scotch Plains Fanwood High School, and based upon our experience with that process, we will look to expand that to the other schools. By using the high school as the pilot, we'll know what works, what doesn't, and be able to tailor those installations in the other buildings. We are also continuing to improve our building-based internal emergency security notification systems. And finally, we, with the support of the board, are continuing to support the implementation of the student safety and wellness through our collaboration with the Scotch Plains Police Department by our expansion of the special law enforcement officer programs in all of our buildings. Under real-world connections across the curriculum, we are looking to increase students' exposure to engineering and design processes as they relate to creativity by expanding the Math Explorations program to include robotics in grade 6. We're reviewing and revising our Quest units of study to incorporate more interdisciplinary and authentic learning experiences. Equally, we're reviewing and revising the language arts curriculum K-5. This is part of their cyclical review process. There'll be a particular focus on authentic reading and writing experiences for the students. The Tech Ed program in 7th grade is going to be revised to focus on the design process and to increase student choice in that curriculum. And we are continuing to work with Union County College on the development of dual enrollment for our students. Dr. Heise is looking particularly at one course that he thinks will be ready to go potentially for September a year from now. We are also, through the grant with Kane University that we applied for, looking to extend opportunities for a small subset of students to potentially get dual enrollment credit at Kane University. But that is dependent in part on the outcomes of whether or not our district with the other participating districts are selected for that grant. Finally, the last two areas deal with STEAM. We are going to continue the integration of developing elementary, middle, and high school exemplar units of study to augment our STEAM program, recognizing that the integration of art into STEM creates STEAM. And we are going to continue to expand the STEAM and the robotics in middle school co-curricular initiatives. Finally, then under professional development, we were so pleased that in our strategic planning that the community recognized the value of the professional development for our staff. And so we are going to continue. We're coming off of a very successful program with Kane University and the Plainfield Public Schools in terms of building teacher leadership capacity that has existed for the last 3 years. That grant did end, but we are looking to continue to build on that work by working with Kane University in Plainfield, and we will be bringing to the board a proposal for how we can continue that work in succeeding years. And that proposal will be coming to the board in the spring. We are also looking to disseminate the work that we did with Kane in Plainfield through the New Jersey Teacher Leadership Network. We have been engaged in that work because the State Department recognized the work that we did with Kane, and so we will be looking to see how that leadership network can be developed within our district. We will continue our writing workshop lesson study initiative. This works with a consultant, Matt Hall. That work has been very well received by our teaching staff. They really enjoy working with him. We are going to, at Brunner, is going to have an initiative on doing a lesson study themed around the implementation of culturally sustaining pedagogy. We will pilot that at Brunner, and then depending upon how that works, that may be expanded to other schools over time. And we are going to continue workshops on integrating movement in the fine arts to help capitalize on how we can all benefit from deepening our understanding of learning through kinesthetics. We are going to expand the flex professional development opportunities for our staff. they have been well received. It helps us to tailor the professional development under the guise that we know that one size doesn't fit all. And just as we know the importance of engaging and having students have greater choices, having our staff have some greater choices around their own professional development makes sense. Our kindergarten teachers are going to continue to work on the kindergarten entry assessment training and continue to utilize and deepen their understanding of using Teaching Strategies Gold, particularly the online portfolio assessment system. And we are continuing to provide training in promoting spatial awareness in early childhood. This is connected to the initiative where our kindergarten teachers will have the opportunity to work with 2 authors who are developing a book around the theme of the importance of developing spatial awareness in early childhood. And our teachers are working with that author on both reflecting on what they do in the classroom and how that can be publicized through a book to help expand that knowledge for other teachers throughout the country and indeed the world. And finally, we are continuing to support the implementation of the NJDOE NEAR first through grade 3 guidelines. We've received a great deal of recognition from the State Department for our leadership in our early childhood initiatives, and we continue to look forward to working with the Department of Ed on that. And last but not least, our 4th goal focuses on community and parent engagement. We are going to look to find a way to train our administrators in the effective use of social media. We are providing support for the reorganization of CPAG, that's our Special Ed Parent Advisory Group, and we will support the implementation of parent workshops for them. We are providing, as noted above, some of these areas cross areas because the health and wellness integrates at times with helping to produce activities for parents and community engagement. And so that deals with the middle school workshops I spoke about earlier. We are also conducting meetings for parents and guardians for our English language learner students. We're providing workshops for preschool parents, particularly focused around supporting literacy development at home. We are providing parents with workshops on navigating Google Classroom, PowerSchool, and Naviance at the high school. Naviance is our guidance program. It's a platform that helps support the counseling efforts in terms of college and career exploration. And we are continuing English language learner workshops through roundtable meetings to provide support for those parents that are navigating the American school system for the first time. And lastly, we will be exploring the implementation of the Swift K-12 communication process to augment Honeywell so that we'll be able to get messages out to parents in a more quickly, directly, and as needed by school, by grade level. If the system works the way we're anticipating it will, we'll be able to tailor announcements so that parents aren't bombarded with too many emails, but get richer information from us in a timely manner.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes.
You're welcome.
It's a lot of work.
We'll be busy, but it's all good work.
Can I have a motion that we acknowledge the presentation of the strategic goals?
So moved.
Second.
Are there comments and questions tonight? I know people have started discussions in committees, or, yes, Mrs. Winkler?
Quick question. For the last item under Goal 3, support teacher understanding and implementation of Department of Education, what is NEAR, N-I-E-E-R?
It's the National Early Education, I forget all of the letters, but NEAR has to do with the early childhood work.
Yeah, it's basically around pre-K and K.
Right. Yeah, I don't know the exact meaning of the acronym, but we'll spell it out. That's a good thing for us to do. We need Kate Rosander here. She's our expert.
I'm sure she knows it right off the top of her
Early
head.
Wait, Dr. Mast has looked it up. What is it?
What is it?
National Institute for Early Education Research.
Right.
Okay.
We've worked with a partnership from NEAR through Rutgers, and we're continuing that work.
Other questions or comments? So we have several weeks before we vote on this, so any thoughts, suggestions people have, please talk about them in committees or reach out to Dr. Hayes. Okay, continuing.
So for 7S, at our last meeting, Mrs. Rabimbis and Ms. Kaylin Taggart-Franz presented our report on the school safety statistics and the HIB statistics for January through June of 2018. And I would ask that the board approve the SSDS and HIB reports presented for that time period at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions, Dr. Hayes? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed? I didn't,
Any
I
opposed?
think everybody was a yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And tonight, I would ask that the board approve the harassment, intimidation, and bullying self-assessments that were done in each of our schools. Mrs. Franz presented that report to you at the last meeting. You have the compilation of the scores in front of you. These will be submitted to the New Jersey Department of Education. And when the New Jersey Department of Education approves them, then they will be posted on our website. But these are the scores for the 17-18 school year that normally would have been submitted in the June timeframe, but the State Department has changed some elements of this, and so this is now the timeframe for last year where we're supposed to be submitting it. So I need an approval of the self-assessments this evening.
So moved.
Second.
And before we vote, just a note for the public that we met all the expectations and in many cases exceeded those, if they didn't hear the report from last time. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And on 9S, the board received with their packets, I believe, the dyslexia screening process for grades K to 2 and newly enrolled students in grades K to 6. And I would ask that the board approve the dyslexia screening process for the Scotch Plains Fanwood Public Schools districts this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
This could be
All the-
roll call. I would do this as a roll call because
Okay.
it's related to curriculum.
Mrs. Saradaki?
Dr. Kulikowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Winkler?
Yes.
Mrs. Boroff?
Yes.
Dr. Clancy?
Yes.
Mrs. Soriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer?
Yes.
And then I would ask that the board approve the personnel report as reviewed in exec this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Saradaki, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Kulikowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Winkler?
Yes.
Mrs. Boroff?
Yes.
Dr. Clancy?
Yes.
Mrs. Soriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer?
Yes.
Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. That brings us to the business functions.
Nope.
Did I skip?
Open mic.
Oh, public comment. We do have another opportunity for anyone from the public who would like to come to the microphone. If you do, please give us your name, the town in which you reside, and you have 2 minutes. There is another opportunity. So, okay, Mrs. Saradaki.
I'd like to group these items if nobody has an objection. 1 BUS, I'm asking for the board to approve the superintendent's recommendations for staff training reimbursements on the report dated October 18th, 2018. There are 2 reports that were provided. 2 BUS, I'd like the board to acknowledge receipt of the disbursement listings for the month of September 2018 for various bank accounts. 3 BUS, I would like the board to acknowledge receipt of the district school security and fire drill reports for the month of September 2018. 4 BUS, there were no related services to be approved at this time. 5 BUS, I'd like the board to acknowledge receipt of the 2019-2020 tentative budget calendar. You will see some items on that that are highlighted or with question marks because we don't have certain dates at this time. 6 BUS, I'd like the board to authorize submission of the 2018 to 2020 Comprehensive Maintenance Plan and M1 reports as you've received them. 7 BUS, I'd like the board to approve the 2018-2019 Non-Public School Technology Initiative Program agreements for the following participating schools located within this district: Union Catholic High School, St. Bartholomew Academy, Christopher Academy, Scotch Plains Baptist Christian Day School, the Jewish Community Center, and Wonder Years Academy. 8 BUS was approved on October 11th. 9 BUS, I'd like the board to acknowledge receipt of the board secretary report, treasurer of school funds report, and budget adjustments. And that's for the month of ending September 30th, 2018. 10 BUS, I'd like the board to approve the bills on the report received for the period September 22nd, 2018 through October 12th, 2018 in the amount of $3,351,367.72. 11 BUS, 12 BUS, 13 BUS, and 14 BUS were approved at the October 11th meeting. 15 BUS is new. I'd like to, the Board of Education to authorize Current Environmental Incorporated in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, to handle the paperwork to close the New Jersey DEP case regarding the petroleum release in the soil under the high school auto shop. The cost of these services is estimated to be $2,100, with this amount to be paid in advance as a retainer. Cost could increase if the scope of services increases or if there are unforeseen underground complications. What happened when they removed our auto lifts, 2 of the lifts were clean underneath when they did soil testing. One of them had a limited amount of release of the hydraulic fluid. And so we have to set up a case number and have it cleared by the DEP before we can move forward with putting another lift in the auto shop.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, comments and questions on any of the items that Mrs. Saradaki had? By the way, the lift we're replacing it with is electric, so we can't have a problem with this again. That's good to know. Comments or questions? Mrs. Saradaki, can you just explain for everyone about why there's so many question marks on the budget calendar? Those, I don't, let me see if I have a copy of it here. I meant as far as the dates and so forth. They're 2019 dates, and the Union County has not released the calendar for 2019 for elections. A lot of those dates I estimated based on the past years, and they may be correct, but, and also the state has not released the date of the governor's budget address, and to tie into that, the budget dates for our actual submission of the budget and the dates where we are permitted to have the hearing because the state dictates those periods have not been established, and those aren't normally established till the January timeframe. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Just wanted them to know why there were so many questions when we're, say, tentative there. And, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that does bring us to board policies. Mrs. Winkler.
Okay. I'm going to start by moving that the board approve second reading and adoption of the following board policies. Regulation 2431.1, emergency procedures for athletic practices and competitions. Policy and Regulation 3160 and 4160, physical examination. Policy and Regulation 3218 and 4218 on substance abuse. Policy 5300, automated external defibrillators, as well as Regulation 5300, also on AEDs. Policy and Regulation 5310, health services. Policy and Regulation 5330, administration of medication. Policy and Regulation 5330.01, administration of medical marijuana. Policy and Regulation 5600, student discipline and code of conduct. Policy 6470, payment of claims. Policy and Regulation 7510, use of school facilities. Policy 8505, local wellness policy / nutrient standards for meals and other foods. Policy and Regulation 8441, care of injured and ill persons.
Is there a second? Second. Any comments or questions? I know we had them for first reading and all. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I'd like to move that the board approve first reading. First reading of the following policies. I'll read them off as a list, and then I'll go into some detail about them. Policy 3431.1 and 4431.1 on family leave. Policy 3431.3, New Jersey's Family Leave Insurance Program. Policy 3322 and 4322, staff members' use of personal cellular telephones and other communication devices. Policy and Regulation 3142, non-renewal of non-tenured teaching staff members. And Policy and Regulation 4146, non-renewal of non-tenured support staff members. So changes to Policy 3431.1 and 4431.1 on family leave. The Federal Family and Medical Leave Act has been revised for an eligible employee to care for a covered service member or veteran, as well as a child. I guess that was, anyhow. Therefore, the policy 3431.1 covering our teaching staff members and 4431.1 covering our support staff members were both revised to incorporate the definitions and the eligibility requirements relative to service members and veterans. That's the primary changes in those two policies. These policies have also been updated to reflect general FMLA and New Jersey FLA eligibility based on the United States Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage. These updated policies provide clarification regarding the use of sick time concurrent with FMLA and New Jersey FLA leave time. They clarify the granting of simultaneous leave to more than one eligible employee from the same family under NJFLA, as well as district requirements under NJFLA for leaves of absence beyond the period of requested family leave. And a section addressing the processing of complaints has also been added. And this is mandated, these changes, so that we could be in compliance with both the federal and state laws on family leave. Policy 3431.3, New Jersey's Family Leave Insurance Program. The only change to this policy is the notice required for applying for leave for the employee to bond with a child during the first 12 months after the child's birth or upon adoption of the child. 30 days notice. It states 30 days notice. We'll bring this policy in line with the changes to the other policy that I just mentioned to be in accordance with the Family Leave Acts, both federal and state. Policy 3322 and 4322, staff members' use of personal cellular telephones and other communication devices. This update regarding use of cell phones for non-school related personal matters during the workday expands methods of communication to include text messaging and posting on social networking sites, and the devices in which such communications are made, including tablets and other electronic devices. We did, Strauss Esme had suggested listing specific places where this would be okay. We chose to not be that specific and sort of leave it to the discretion of our staff that they should be outside the presence of students. Policy and regulation 3142, non-renewal of non-tenured teaching staff members, and the policy and regulation 4146, non-renewal of non-tenured support staff members. These policies have been revised to provide the superintendent and the board two options on how the superintendent informs the board regarding the non-renewal of non-tenured teaching staff members. One option is the superintendent informing the board with a written notice and reasons for each recommendation not to renew prior to May 15th. The second option provides for the superintendent to conduct an executive session with the board prior to May 15th to review the superintendent's recommendations and reasons. These changes are being made to bring these policies into alignment with changes that were made to Achieve NJ. So these are also important changes that we should make.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions from Mrs. Winkler or other members of the policy committee? Okay, we have time before a final vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to new board business. Other board business, requests to attend workshops. Workshop reports.
A report from last night.
Winkler.
Nancy and I last night attended the Union County School Boards Association meeting. Can I say the main topic of the meeting was a bit of an update on some school law issues, schools, ethics, and social media. There was a presentation by Lester Taylor, who is a lawyer with Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt, and Capelli. What can I say? I guess I should start with how they started. At the beginning of the evening, Christy Tai, who is one of the school board's administrators, came. She was mentioning that during workshop there on Monday afternoon there's going to be an ed camp. Will be a little bit different than things they've done in the past. From 1 to 2:15 you can propose topics to discuss, and then from 2:30 to 4 there will be discussions on those topics. Just a different way to learn, sort of more informal, like chat groups rather than formal workshop sessions. She mentioned the Steve Van Zandt concert. There will be assigned seating, and she said if you plan to attend the concert to pick up your tickets with anyone that you actually want to sit with while you're there, because if you go to pick up your ticket and then
seats,
your
so
friend
you
goes
could
to pick
be-
up their ticket 2 hours later, you will not be seated together.
And you can only pick up 2 tickets
Yeah,
at
you
a
can
time.
only pick up 2 at a time, so if we all want to go as a group, we can do that. She said they were revising the school law publication this year. They're diving into it a little deeper, so we'll hear more about that. And she mentioned the report, the task force report for the non-college bound learner is out, and it's available on the school board's website for anyone who'd like to have a look at that. She mentioned that after spending so much time focusing on college and career readiness, we really need to acknowledge that we do have kids who are not planning on doing college after school, and we should be addressing their needs and their concerns as well. What else? Then Ray Pinney spoke. He mentioned he will be having recording a podcast on October 29th at 7 p.m. on the basics for school board members, what they need to know, and that this would be a great one. We're all on the board now, but if Mr. Akins, thank you, if Mr. Akins should be watching this at home, just so he can certainly tune into the podcast. It's available on the New Jersey School Boards Association website. What else? He suggested beginning relationships before the reorg meeting if someone new gets elected to the board, and that new board member orientations will be held in late January and early February. He recommended register early because they fill up. Then we had a governmental relations update from Christopher Jones, who's the legislative advocate over at school boards, or I guess one of their legislative advocates. We talked about them revisiting the funding formula. There's a Bill S2 that they are considering, which is meant to sort of make some adjustments. Some communities are considered overfunded based on the funding formula. Other communities are underfunded. So you can look that up. It's being discussed. They're revisiting standardized testing. On October 3rd, the State Board of Education began steps to amend the PARCC regulations, eliminating English, language arts, and math exams for 11th grade. This proposed change is now in the 60-day public comment period. Those were the main ones that he talked about.
Amy and I scrounged last night, so we took all the leftovers.
Oh, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
School Board's Fall Law Forum is going to be on October 25th at workshop, so anyone who would like to register for that can do so. Training to help solve your labor relations challenges. There are, the school boards is presenting Ready, Set, Bargain on November 30th or January 25th at their headquarters. Innovations in School Finance and Employee Healthcare Conference is going to be Thursday, February 21st at the Conference Center at Mercer. And you can register for that. Analyzing and Constructing Salary Guides is Friday, February 8th or March 1st at their headquarters in Trenton. I think what else? Oh, so then they talked about, then Lester Taylor came out to talk about school ethics and social media. He talked about about the Code of Ethics. He began with a whole in-depth dive into the Code of Ethics and recommended that board members should know the policies and follow the rules that they set. He highlighted certain things. I will confine my board action to policy-making, planning, and appraisal. I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. I'm looking to see what else was. He gave us a number of examples of cases that had come before the courts. I won't go into all of them now. There were a number of questions that came out about the recording of executive sessions. He did say that attorney-client privilege is sacrosanct, and so they always say, and that he thinks that probably that will not come to pass, that we need to videotape those things. I think what else? There was a lot in there, but mostly he talked about a number of the different cases that had come that were regarding ethics, concerns of ethics violations.
I think it was a great review, and we were really happy that we could get copies for everyone so people can really read through these. Because he made the point that ignorance of the law is no excuse. And, talked about things that certainly we know about from our training, that we're individuals and we have no individual power. It's as a group.
And that when we post on social media, anything we should note, if it's going to be public posted on social media, that we are not speaking for the board. And
So
that we're only
yes,
giving
it's
our
really good to
personal
read
opinion.
through.
He made a point of stressing that a number of times.
Comments or questions, anyone? Thank you, Amy. Mrs. Winkler. So, let's see, we need to, we did the school physician last time. New board committee, can we have a motion to approve our new community relations members?
So moved. So moved. Is,
Can we have a second first and then ask your question? Okay, second, yes, Dr.
Yeah.
Clancy.
It's great, Mrs. Boroff is going to be on it, but is Mrs. Williams still going to be on it when we met?
Oh, it was really Mrs. Williams who was on it.
Kind of got excited.
But we can have, can we have a
It was
fourth?
just an error.
Oh, okay.
No, because then Nancy wouldn't be able to participate.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Question.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approval of the September minutes. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have to recuse from the 25th. I was not here on the 25th.
Okay, and Mrs. Siriani was the second. Did you get that? Any other abstentions?
Who made the motion?
Cindy.
Yes,
Okay.
Dr. Clancy. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to our final opportunity. If there's anyone from the public who would like to come speak, please give us your name, the town in which you reside, and you have 2 minutes. Okay. Seeing no one, good of the order.
Several of us attended the rally at the high school on Tuesday night, the exact name of which it's SPF Students United for and many issues. I just wanted to say I was very impressed with the students and the work that they did to organize it. I thought the speakers were really interesting and thoughtful, and there was a spirit of let's start here and keep moving. And I felt it was a privilege to be there, to hear everyone speak. So.
Anyone else for the good of the order?
I went to a Lego robot Flex PD today, run by our very own Sasha Slocum. There were teachers from the high school, elementary, middle school. We opened up a Lego kit, built a robot, class 1. It went like a flash. We were so engaged.
Very nice.
So the teachers were able to do it, huh? Or the
Yes, but
administrators?
collaboration
I'm sure
was
the kids
very
could have done
important.
it, but for adults, sometimes they're faster than we are. So that's great. Sound like fun PD too. Anyone else for the good of the order?
I had the pleasure of attending the Commissioner's Convocation today, where he presented NJDOE 2.0. which is his reorganization schema to focus the NJDOE on being very user-friendly to the school districts and focusing on a service orientation. They also noted that they are constrained by federal and state regulations. So implicit in there was, yes, CUSAC will go forward, but they are trying to move some of CUSAC to monitoring through the electronic collection of data that the state continues to advance. There's a strong focus on equity and excellence and trying to give school districts the opportunity to innovate and try new things. So they're trying to balance giving latitude for that, but at the same time recognizing that there are certain regulatory constraints that we all have to live within. So it was an interesting presentation. Many members of his executive group were there to present, and they're continuing to move us forward as a state in terms of education. He wants our NJDOE to be the best in the nation, and we support his goal in that regard.
Absolutely. Well, we're number 2. New Jersey's number 2, so we can move to number 1. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Just a reminder that before we meet again on November 15th, I would encourage everyone to vote on November 6th. So don't forget to go vote.
It's getting late.
It is. Oh my God. Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good night, everyone. We'll see you in November 15th.